All right. So we've seen two ways to adjust exposure and the contrast globally, meaning over the course of the entire picture. Now we're going to look at how to adjust things locally. And the best way to do that is with dodge and burn, which means I'm going to lighten some small areas and darken some small areas. So to create a dodge and burn layer, I go up here to the upper left, click on Layer, New, Layer, and I'm going to label this. See, it's highlighted in blue. I'm going to label it right now, Dodge, Burn, so I know what it is. The mode I need to change to Overlay, and then I will click to confirm Fill with Overlay Neutral Color, 50% gray, and hit OK. Now this shows up over here, and it's not affecting anything yet. If I turn all the other layers off, we see that it is a neutral gray color. So in overlay mode, the 50% gray right in the middle means nothing's happening at all. Now if I make something darker, it's going to darken it. If I make something lighter, it's going to lighten it. So I have positive and negative. All right, let me turn everything back on. Hey, you know what? I think this levels, which makes everything super bright white, I think I'm going to turn it off because I want to selectively make some of these white and leave the others this little bit of gray using dodge burn. So if I click on the dodge burn layer, meaning it's active, so I can do things to it. If I'm clicked on this levels thing and I try and use one of the tools, all the tools are affecting this layer that's highlighted. So I need to be clicked on and highlight the layer that I want to do the work to. Okay, so dodge and burn. Move over to the tool palette here, and this little lollipop looking thing is the dodge tool. Now what dodge does, that's an old holdover from the darkroom days, is it dodges light. It's going to make things lighter. So that's highlighted, so that tool is active. I come up here to the top left and see the properties of the tool, and I'm going to make lighter the shadows. No, I don't want to make the shadows lighter. I want to make the highlights lighter. And exposure, I want to keep it down pretty low, because if the exposure is turned way up, when I use the tool, how big this thing is. All right, there it is. When I use the tool, it's just going to be way too strong. I'm making things way too light, way too fast. Now, if I made a mistake like that, I don't like it. What I can do is I can hit Control Z, or alternately, go to Edit and hit, see, Control, well, this is a Macintosh, so that's the Macintosh symbol for Command or Control, but Control Z, Undo Dodge tool. A lot of these things will show you the shortcut. And that's how you slowly learn the shortcuts. And I'm not sure if anyone knows all of the shortcuts, but they're there. Okay, so I want to lighten this area, but not by 90%. I'll lighten it slowly. This is what the brush tool that I'm using looks like. So if I hit this down arrow, I can select one of the presets, and I want kind of a fuzzy brush, something that is a nice feather that is really soft, not something that's a hard circle. If I do something that's a hard circle, then it's pretty obvious what I'm doing. Control Z, get out of that. Whereas if I get something that doesn't have the hard line, then when I use it, at least it's softer. And that's all about edge hardness. It just says hardness here, but edge hardness. If it's 100%, it means that that edge is a very hard line. Control Z to undo. If I go to 0%, it means that edge is a soft line. Control Z. Okay. Size is just the size of the thing. See how small this little dot is here? That's 70 pixels versus 412 pixels. Just make sure the hardness is turned all the way down when you're dodging or burning. Size, you can adjust by the bracket tools. Let's see, TYUIOP, and keep going right on the keyboard. There are two brackets, the square brackets, the more right edge brackets. The ones that are facing left make the tool smaller. Look at the center of the screen. The ones that are facing right, just one key stroke over, make the tool larger. Okay, smaller, larger. It's just the left bracket and the right bracket. Some of the best shortcuts to know. Okay, so let's see highlights. What I want to do with highlights is I want to pull out just a little bit of white in this white water here. Kind of bring some interest. It's okay if I exaggerate just a little bit. You see how strong it is even at 8%? I'll bring some of these highlights in the back out. What bringing out highlights does is it, well, if it's metallic, it gives us some sparkle, but so bringing out a highlight in his cheek, it's gonna lighten up the face a little bit, but not too much. Like if I went like that, it's gonna be a little bit unbelievable. Let's see, make the brush tool a little bigger. Our area is kind of, our eyes are kind of drawn to light. Now to make the shadows darker or make some more complexity in the shadows, I will go over to the left, hit this little arrow to select the burn tool, and I'm going to burn the shadows and bring the exposure way down again. Okay. Just making this area a little bit darker. Make this a little, actually that's not a shadow, that's sort of a mid-tone, that's like a middle color. So let me go to mid-tone. Let's bring this down a little bit. More than 1%, huh? There, I make that. I'm gonna make the corners a little bit darker. I like doing that a lot. This is the move tool. If you're not sure what you're gonna do next, it's good to always select the move tool. Go over to the dodge and burn layer. If I click and make it turn off, we see where we were before. Click to make it turn on and see how things look a little more dynamic, a little more interesting. So I'm going to turn it on, and I want some highlights back here just to bring some attention to the background. Not too much, it's nice. I want all the foreground to have the most attention, but I don't want the background to be too boring. So highlights are, not blur. Where are we? Highlights are dodge. Okay, so see how I'm like dodging like this big area, then that looks fake. So I will hit Control Z and lower the exposure. I'm also going to make the tool smaller. It's the bracket keys that are just to the right of the P key. So I'm going to make these really small. And I want to bring some of these branches out. So I've got to zoom in. Now I can go to View and click zoom in, and view and click zoom in, which is slow, or I can hit Control plus. Control plus zooms in, Control minus zooms out. Okay, Control plus, and I can use the navigators on the side of the windows to go up. Use the bracket keys, bracket left to make it smaller, and just get the exposure up a little bit more. Just drawing and making these brighter. Just so there's some interesting detail in the background. I'm going to hit Control. Oop, what am I doing? I'm going to move that back to the top. There we go. Hit Command minus, and let's see. Turn the exposure back down and do just a couple little exposure tricks back here. If I hit Command 0 or Control 0, sorry, Command is a Apple thing, so Control 0, it fits back in the frame. Turn this BurnDodge off, and we see our original. Turn it back on, and we see what we've done. And I think it looks a little cartoony in here. So what I can do to temper that is turn the opacity down. Turn it off, turn it all the way up, turn it to 50% opacity. Then I've done something that affects the picture, but it's not obvious that I had this heavy hand in manipulating it. So that's BurnDodge. It's mimicking an old darkroom trick that photographers have done, well, basically forever. It's going to make a much more interesting picture.